Hi there, how are we all doing? Nice to see you all again. FinTech. What is FinTech? Where does FinTech come from? What is this FinTech thing all about? It's actually a question I get asked quite frequently, admittedly, predominantly from people who don't work in the banking industry. But I do get the question from an awful lot of technical people, developers, particularly young developers and techies that are starting off in their career and trying to understand where their future might potentially sit. And I also get it quite often when I tell people that I co-host a podcast called FinTech Daydreaming. So what is FinTech? Some people say it's a revolution, and possibly it is a revolution. You could see it that way. I see it more as an industry an industry segment. FinTech is an abbreviation of financial technology, and it's at its fundamental core the innovative use of emerging technologies and existing technologies to basically transform the banking industry as we know it. So, I mean, let's be honest. How many of us actually really enjoy our banking experience? How many of us think it's fantastically cool to do banking and go on to the banking app, etc.? Okay, some of us maybe find it a little bit exciting. I do, partially. But then I work in the banking industry and find the whole banking industry very exciting anyway. But most of our perceptions of what is interesting and cool is actually driven by technology. It's driven by the adoption of the smartphone, the internet, technologies such as cognitive computing, AI, blockchain. We talk about Bitcoin and digital payments. All of these interesting things which are actually being developed more by FinTech companies than by the traditional banks. Whilst most FinTech companies are seen as being new startup companies, FinTech companies can also be existing large companies. I think one of the earliest FinTech companies that most of us in one way or another probably have used or are active users of is PayPal. PayPal used technology to disrupt payments, and I would almost say they are one of the first FinTech companies and one of the largest today. But why is all of this happening then? Because, I mean, traditionally, banks have been very good at technology. If we go back into some of the other videos I've done in the past, I've talked about how banks were adopting very early on technology to help them to improve doing their banking and looking after customers' money. Well, what happened was the financial crisis in 2008. As the financial crisis hit, the banks had to change their focus away from doing technology and being technology active to focusing more on delivering on regulation, ensuring that they didn't go bankrupt, etc. But at the same time, we had an explosion in digital innovation. That's really when the smartphone started. We had a boom of e-commerce, etc., etc. Blockchain started developing around that time. So it created a chasm that expanded further and further between the banks dealing with regulatory compliance, fines, etc., and technology driving a new form of customer expectation. And what we as consumers started seeing as being the norm. With the iPhone, Facebook, social media, platforms, YouTube, the list goes on and on. And these technologies or these platform companies got better and better at treating us as individuals rather than demographics and large collection or group of people. The banks suddenly ended up with a huge chasm, and all of these fantastic technology companies dived in to fill that gap. And that's where you get the FinTech revolution from. Companies taking technologies to do financial technology solutions to drive completely new experiences for us. And it pushed the banks further behind. The banks are catching up. in some cases, but majority what we're seeing is large banks partnering with fintechs to help to close that gap again, right? So what is going to happen in the future? Well, one thing is that banks run the risk of becoming commoditized, where the fintechs take that layer of engagement with their customers, and the banks end up becoming suppliers of white label banking products and solutions to the fintechs. And you no longer have the relationship with the bank, you have the relationship with the WeChats or the Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever the case may be. The other thing that's going to happen is that the bankers of the future are going to be a completely different type of person. Traditionally, bankers have been focused on banking. In the future, bankers are going to be focused on technology. So I think if you are focused on technology, you're a technologist, you're a developer, you're a young developer, then the future of the banking industry is going to be fantastically interesting to you. If you are a traditional banker sitting in a bank, you might find that it's time to reskill. Look at what your skill set should be going forwards. There's some statistics that say that almost up to 50% of people working in the banking industry today might lose their job over the next 2 to 3 years. This happens in all industries. I'm sorry, but the future of banking is going to be dominated by platforms. FinTech is here to stay and it's going to continue growing. The banking domain is going to look very different in the future. And the skill set of bankers in the future is going to be very different. This is a fantastic, interesting time to be working in the banking industry. If you're not, if you're just coming out of school, get into it. Really cool. Talk to you all again later and hope you're having a good week.